welcome to the Bald and Bloviating Podcast. I am your bald host, Mookie Spitz, and my very special bloviating guest today is Mr. Ali Rizvi. Welcome aboard, buddy.
Thank you. I'm balding and bloviating. So
Balding. It looks like you got a haircut. We're on audio, but I see a haircut. I see a little frostiness in the beard. We're like a fine wine, is what I think. Better with age.
yeah, right. That's right. It's great. It's great. This is a good age. I think you're like where I don't know. Are we allowed to talk about our ages?
Our ages?
Yeah.
Oh, who gives a fuck?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I'm 29. How about you?
I'm turning 50 this year, but you've always been sort of my guru in terms of looking at. I love the way that your life has had a very interesting trajectory.
Well, thank you. I'm emotionally about 27, I think. I think 27 is about right. Some people would say 12, depending on context. And
yeah. I feel like I've always felt the same age. It's strange because in your mind you still keep the same stuff that you've had since you were 16, and it's like sort of selective and it's all a mishmash. So I've always felt the same age. So it's really weird when my dad was turning 50, he seemed old. Like he used to talk old, he used to walk old, he used to do it all, like it just felt old. And then now I'm the same age, and it's I don't feel that much different. It's bizarre.
I think society has changed attitudes, right?
Yeah.
When we grew up, if you were, 40, 50 was over the hill. You were done.
That was it.
Nowadays, look, the El Presidente is 78 years old. You've got Mick Jagger in his 80s, isn't he? Just still partying and performing. And you got all those old rockers doing the stadium tours. I saw the Scorpions in Atlantic City, and they rocked it. I took my then at the time 17-year-old kid, and I told him this is the best rock show. Like I saw the Scorpions 35 years ago, and they blew the doors off themselves as a bunch of geriatric German motherfuckers. They were great.
Yeah, I got a couple of. So first of all, I'm seeing Metallica next week, so
All right.
And I've been watching, for anybody who's been into that. You go out on YouTube and you look at the shit they've been doing for the last 2 years, like all their shows around the world, and they sound better than they did before. The sound, James Hetfield's voice, it's incredible. So I got the tickets. So the lady and I are going to be going to check him out on Thursday. But one thing I want to say about Mick Jagger, I think that is the guy. People talk about Hugh Hefner. Fuck Hugh Hefner. Like this is Mick Jagger is the guy who achieved peak manhood. I think because this guy is so he's a great grandfather. He's got
Yeah, I've heard great grandfather, multi zillionaire.
Yeah, so he's a great grandfather, and this is a guy who very recently, within the last decade or so, there were two songs. One was by Keisha, it was TikTok, and she said, we're not going to let you in the club unless you look like Mick Jagger, right? And this guy's a great grandfather, just watching these kids sing about it, him still being the quintessential sex symbol. And then you had Adam Levine, who himself is a sex symbol, going, I got moves like Jagger, and a way to sort of like attract people, women, and he's, I got moves like Jagger. He's the reference point. So I think if you want to get somewhere and you're a great grandfather and you're watching all these kids fucking talking about how, you are the quintessential man that they would get with, that would be, I think that is sort of peak making it.
I would agree. Mick Jagger is the apex predator, not only of rock and roll, but of our culture and society for decades.
Right.
He has also been unabashedly bisexual since inception. So concurrent with all of the gay rights, with civil rights, with the transformation of how we look at sex positivity and sex liberation, Mick Jagger was just fucking everything from the beginning. And he was untouchable in terms of any kind of schizophrenic disconnect between what you're citing as his overt masculinity and machismo and the fact that he was, blowing half of Hollywood. So I
Yeah,
think that this is tremendous. He is a unique case of personality circumventing just about every other factor.
because he is just who he is. He's always been. So I've always loved Mick Jagger. Like since I still love watching him on stage. Like he's still fucking fantastic. I mean, they're great live. I haven't seen them live, but whatever videos I've seen, at least, like they just sound absolutely phenomenal even now, right? So I think, but speaking of that, like, is he has always been sort of androgynous. He's been bisexual. He's been sort of hard to pin down in terms of, just that kind of category. And right now, there's all this talk about masculinity and machismo, and you've got adolescence. The Netflix series that's been going around freaking people out. You've got the Andrew Tates, and then you've got like the frat boy masculinity of the Donald Trump and all of his crew and all of his
And the tech bro masculinity. You've got Zuckerberg with the dude bro chain and bling.
yeah.
You've
And
got Mark Andreessen, who's now all testosterone laced with the Donald. It's
yeah,
quite a turnaround, and at the same time, not particularly surprising. The digitalistas from the beginning have been rogue in terms of freedom of speech, in terms of breaking things and moving on, right?
I think there is a sort of another kind of masculinity that I sort of grew up with, thinking like, I was born in the 70s. I think you were born in the 60s, like whatever. There was a certain there was the James Bond, the cool, calm, collected, confident, content, lots of C words, relaxed under pressure, not losing your cool, big crisis happened. It's all right. We'll take care of it. I got it. That kind of just taking care of shit and staying calm type of thing. So, James Bond, Barack Obama, John Hamm, George Clooney, that kind of thing. Where it's sort of like understated. These are not the people who would go around bragging about all the pussy they got. They're just sort of like, no, we don't kiss and tell. We're gentlemen. The gentlemen. And then I think the gentlemen, and then you've got the genital men, right? And those are the ones who are like, hey, beer, titties, my dick. And, those are, and Elon Musk has 14 kids. I think he only got one of those kids by fucking. And that first child that he had, I think, who died, unfortunately. But the rest of them are all IVF and surrogate mothers and things like that. And it's
Yeah,
those
but
are,
he has his harem.
yeah,
So it is a dude bro masculinity
yeah.
for
It's
sure.
tempted kind of dude bro masculinity. I mean, this is a guy who I think I don't think he had a lot of luck when he was younger. He made a lot of money, he did all this stuff, and now he's kind of literally on top of the world. But it's weird that people who have everything, like these guys, like the most powerful man in the world, Donald Trump, who's a billionaire, and the most rich man, the richest man in the world, who's Elon Musk, is also obviously a multi-billionaire. Both these guys just can't stop whining and bitching, and that's what they complain that women do all the time, right? They're just talking
Yeah.
about how they're victims and everybody's out to get them. They just need to. It's bizarre.
I just think it's effective. If you're on social media for more than 5 minutes, and you're a social media professional in the sense that you've acquired a large following,
Yeah,
and you make an impact, and as much as anyone else that controversy, any kind of negativity stirs up the minions. So you have this dichotomy between the person, the human, and then the avatar of their social media and messaging presence. And being a whiner and a victim works. It works in this environment. And I think it's a Darwinian selective mechanism of what percolates to the top, and it's self selecting. So
yeah,
I got triggered with Bill Maher's little little monologue last week where he for 12 minutes he talked about his dinner with Donald Trump, ostensibly to humanize the man and show that exactly what I'm talking about is the bare knuckle reality. You have Trump, the Trumper, across all of his channels, and then you've got Trump, the person, who is gracious and genteel and welcoming and courteous. And Maher's attempt, I believe, was just to reinforce his ideology and belief that we should all come together as people, be reasonable, and have a conversation. What the experience amounted to was basically being a tool of Trump. Trump knew that he could engender this kind of reaction. And
Mhm.
you've got Maher going to the libtard nation telling them what a swell guy Donald is. So I think that that's short circuited. But to your point, and to address your consternation, I think Musk and the rest of these Twitterati personalities have created these avatars and personas with the express intent of maximizing attention and reach. And it just works. It works for Musk, it's worked for Trump. And then you have people who are trying it and failing, like Mark Zuckerberg. His
Yeah,
his his online presence has become ridiculous, a parody of this
I,
billionaire victim.
I'm gonna agree with you. I think I do see that with Mark Zuckerberg. I don't necessarily. I don't agree with that with when it comes to. I kind of agree with that with Donald Trump too, but with Elon Musk, I could see it a little differently. I think that this is a guy who was always, the guy who was always picked on and bullied and everything when he was younger, and then he just grew up. He got richer than everybody. He got a hair transplant and everything, and now he's like, okay, I'm hanging out with the president, the White House, and I'm gonna fucking take revenge on all of you guys who slighted me. You guys all thought I was a loser. Well, now I'm gonna fuck you over. It seems more like that kind of dynamic. It's more like rubbing it in. Right? It
Yeah,
that
I think it's probably both. It's
probably
probably
yeah,
both. Yeah,
yeah.
there's a vengeance kind of element, but I just think that this shit works, and people are opportunistic, and they throw shit against the wall, and metrics are instantaneous and revealing in the digital world. And
Yeah.
then you just it's a natural selection of being a fucking asshole online.
There is and the Bill Maher thing. I think part of that. I've been thinking about this a lot. Like why people are doing certain things, um, and just with the Bill Maher thing going out. I kind of feel like he's trying to be a good loser, right? For ages he's been talking about well, Trump, his mom fucked an orangutan, he's been doing all this shit, yeah, that
which he cited in his monologue
his,
on Friday. Yeah.
he's been doing that the whole time, and then Trump got elected, he lost, you know Bill Maher lost, and then Biden came in, and then Trump got elected again, and Bill Maher lost, so he's been on the losing side of it. This time he won the popular vote too. So Bill Maher's, I feel like he's just trying to be like, all right, you know what? Yeah, it's hard to take. It's hard for the ego to take that. There's all of these other people gloating, and it's one of those things like if you can't beat him, join him type thing. It really feels like Bill Maher's sort of doing that. He seems like he's got a little bit of an uh, of an
Well,
ego
or that,
bruise.
or just sheer vanity. You're invited by the president of the United States to a dinner at the White House. And Bill Maher's had an illustrious
Yeah,
career and success beyond his own wildest imagination, but it's flattering to be invited by the head of the free world to a dinner, and then for that individual to laugh at your jokes and ostensibly treat you so special. And I literally think it just went to his vainglorious fucking head. And then that 12-minute rant about what a swell
yeah,
guy Donald is was to assuage that Vanity Fair of Bill Maher, but it simultaneously turned him into a fucking tool. And I think I've broken up with Bill
yeah.
Maher. I break up with celebrities. So, Nietzsche's Twilight of the Idols, where you have these
Right.
idols that are hollow inside, and then you can actually tap them and hear the echo, right? So the twilight of the idols for me, Neil deGrasse Tyson and now Bill Maher, where you have an individual that you've pretty much looked up to, a paragon of reason and communication and storytelling and analysis and great strategy. You don't always agree with them, but they truly embody what you would
Yeah.
consider an enlightened public figure. And then they pull some shit and you get so mad that it's like a breakup. It's like you date someone and the sex is great and the conversation is stellar and you really think you're in it to win it for the long term, and then they do one thing that kind of bugs you, and then you're obviously you need to forgive them. No one's perfect. They do one or two other things, but
Right.
then it's the one thing that they do, and you're like, no, we're done. And
Yeah.
Bill Maher
That
this Friday did that for me. And what
did
happened,
for
just
you.
as an aside, I saw Neil deGrasse at the Beacon in New York just before I left, moved from New York, Manhattan to Orange County. He had a surprised guest, Michio Kaku, the professor
Oh
at
fuck.
Columbia, the father of string theory,
Why?
and now the advocate
Well,
of
he's not.
quantum
Or,
supremacy. Quantum computing has already changed the world. And I heard an hour of bloviating, hyped bullshit. And Neil did not push back. Neil just sucked that shit up and he was dead to me
yeah.
after that. I used to listen to Star Talk. I
Neil.
used to have Neil on my feed. I used to reshare his shit. And I just filtered that motherfucker out. Unforgivable. Now, am I being a curmudgeon? Am I being an old doddering fool? No, I'm like,
Oh.
come on, man. You no longer have any integrity. If you know, go
That
ahead.
the great point that you have for you was the Trump dinner. For other people, it's been, the Bill's position on, I don't know, vaccines. For other people, it's been different for different people. But I think that it's I just think he fell for the bullshit. One thing I remember when George W. Bush was running for president the first time around, right? After Clinton. And then he was just going around. I mean, he just appeared to be such a buffoon on TV. Anytime he talked, he just sounded like, an idiot. But what I'd heard sort of behind the scenes, and I've heard that Donald Trump is like this too, is of this guy, if you're in a room with him and he comes and meets you, he's going to make you feel like you're his best friend ever. And if he meets you 2 months later, he remembers. Like if you told him your uncle was sick, he'll come and he's like, "Hey, how's your uncle doing? What was his name?" Yeah, his name was Michael, wasn't it? How's he doing? And then, people hear
Yeah,
that and they
but
feel like,
so
okay,
the
he
fuck
remembers me,
what? That's
knows me.
part of my point, which is everyone knew the Donald is
How?
like this. Everyone is. It wasn't like he's an
Yeah.
alien and he fell out of the sky and Bill discovered for the first time Trump's humanity. That is a Trump skill set. His external persona is fucking asshole who hates the people I hate. And his internal persona, his intimate persona, is the host with the most. Everyone knows this. This is not a news fucking
Mm.
flash. And it took Bill Maher 12 minutes on his show. He couldn't even have time to do his what was it, New Rules episode, which is my favorite part of his show. He couldn't do New Rules because he's bloviating about what a gentleman Donald Trump is. Get the fuck out of here. Seriously.
I I think he also, I mean, he talked about how what he's like, that guy in there is not the guy
Everyone
here
knows this.
outside.
Everyone.
Yeah. I don't know. Did he really present that as a good thing? Because I think that may be a lot worse than the fact that, at least,
No,
no,
no, that's
he
not
didn't.
how
He
he
was just,
presented it. I watched the fucking segment twice so that my divorce from Bill Maher could be justified. He did a million disclaimers. Like he kept saying, like, does this
Yeah.
justify the other stuff? Does this, all I want to do is to show you that I'm reporting objectively of what we talked about in his demeanor. Fuck you, Bill. We know what you're doing here.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who sort of fell out of it. It's been interesting, this whole thing. I've watched this whole dynamic. I remember like, up to 10 years ago, when and I used to, people used to know this and it was a cool thing. And now I'm kind of a little, I don't like talking about it as much. That, when I went on Rogan, it's been like
Well, that
around
that was
10
that
years
was
now.
huge. I mean,
Uh,
you went on Rogan when Rogan's reach was what, 1/50th of what it is right now, maybe. Yeah.
yeah, a lot less. But the thing is, when I went there, all the topics were different. The people were different. It was all of the cultural
Yeah,
heroes and the
Joe
social
Rogan
media heroes
endorsed
were different.
Bernie
And now,
Sanders, remember? All right, so it's
yeah,
Rogan is
yeah.
a
And now,
creature. He's an extroverted emotional type. If he feels good in the
right.
moment, then he's all in. And he's vacillated from one extreme to the other based on how that person makes him feel.
Yeah, I think I've always kind of, I think he, even with me, like he used to ask a lot of questions and he was like very interested even after the podcast. He messaged a bunch of times when he saw interesting articles, and so we had some exchanges. But so he seemed like a genuinely curious guy. I don't think he's that different personality wise right now. I just think the whole landscape's changed, the topics have changed. At that time it was the big, the ISIS, Islamic terrorism, all that, and then eventually all of the big like terrorist incidents became the American right wing, far right stuff, right? And then now Sam Harris is like a pariah
To the to
to
the
all of
to
these
the
guys.
dark web, folks. Right? Yeah, but Sam
The
Sam
dark
Harris
web,
has been
the
generally
Elon,
pretty reasonable, I think.
the whole time he's been consistent. Like there's some people who have been
Yeah, and I
consistent
disagree
throughout, and I
with
think
Sam. For example, I think his Israel bias, and he's got a blind spot toward the
yeah,
Palestinian situation. And there's a few items where I think Sam's kind of out to lunch, but I do agree that he's been consistent and he's been intellectually honest. So you can disagree with
yeah,
Sam on points, but he's not there with the whim of the blowing winds of trends. So he's not an intellectually
yeah,
dishonest opportunist, and a lot of other people are. I do not think that Joe Rogan is necessarily a crass opportunist. I think that his psychological type, as I mentioned, is he's an emotional extrovert, and he's not a cognitive
yeah,
person. He's smart. Joe Rogan is intelligent and he's obviously very articulate, but his knowledge of science and mathematics evinces this reality that you do not have a person who puts thinking at the top of his skill set. It's not about thinking, it's about emotionally relating to feelings. And when the landscape of feeling and opinion changes, Joe Rogan is going to naturally shift with those things. He has no problem having Alex Jones on his show one day and then Sir Roger Penrose the next. There's no disconnect for Joe Rogan because it's emotional. Oh, I have Alex Jones and he's got a big reach and he's controversial. And then I have Sir Roger Penrose and he's one of the foremost geniuses of the last century, acclaimed physicist and cosmologist. So this is cool. It's not about strategic
mhm,
context. It's just about how he feels.
yeah. What did you think about how Rogan had um the Dave Smith and Douglas Murray on? I don't know if you heard about that. There's a
Yeah,
big
that's just the
brouhaha
latest
about
in
it.
endless brouhahas. And I think it just reinforces what I'm saying here, which is that if the idea is controversial, then there's a lot of attention. And if there's a lot of attention, then a lot of people are watching. And if a lot of people are watching, then then the emotional stakes are higher, and he's being self-actualized. It's interesting, it's kinetic, it's dynamic. What's the strategy behind this?
Yeah.
What's the context of air quote platforming certain people and not others? What is Joe Rogan's actual belief system and ideology? Well, it gets skittish because it's self-contradictory. Why is it self-contradictory? Because he's an emotional kind of guy. And why, lastly, is Joe
Mm-hmm.
Rogan as popular as he is? Because he's emotional. People resonate emotionally with other people much more than they do so cognitively. So it all fits to me. I don't see any contradiction except the contradiction engendered by people who are emotional. It's not an analytical way of viewing the world and
Yeah.
oneself. It's de facto an emotional one. That's Joe Rogan. And he's male and he's buff and he's like a real man, but he's also psychologically emotional, which is a traditionally female kind of vector. That's
Mm-hmm.
what makes him interesting, and I think that's what adds to his popularity.
He's also really short.
Yeah,
Like I was
yeah,
surprised to see that.
yeah,
Like when I went, I think he's
yeah,
like
yeah,
5'6" or
yeah.
something.
So I think all this makes sense. All this makes sense, but it
Yeah.
goes to how we judge other people. And going back to Trump, the real Trump, my divorce from Bill Maher, and the clusterfuck of the situation we're in right now with regard to what the truth is, the discrepancy between perception and reality, and what the hell is going on with the world. And I think it's a backlash to the backlash, where you had decades of an institutional perspective that was highly dominated by reason and analysis and
Yeah.
reasonableness. And look at the mess that these people got us into. So
I,
fuck it.
it,
Let it out.
I,
Be emotional. Be irrational.
I, we were the ones. I think we were the ones who were wrong. I mean, I'm gonna say, okay, not we, as in you and me. I'm not gonna speak for you, but I think that I was wrong in a sense. I think guys like Sam Harris, who I like, I think we think similarly. The way that Sam Harris thinks about things, I kind of process things the same way. He had this idea that if he was just about reason and rationality. If you make a reasonable and rational argument, right, then people will helplessly
Yeah.
be convinced by what you're saying. And now I do think that does work out long term, right? Kepler, Galileo, they came up with a bunch of ideas that everybody emotionally reacted to, but over time, all of these things, like truth eventually bears itself out. But um, overall, I don't think that that's how you see really, really smart, really reasonable people who are just not immune to these sort of emotional whims and things that they associate with, that resonate with them. Right? They will be selective about their own narrative and their preferences and everything that made them them. Were they bullied as a child? Were they did they what kind of trauma they went through? What their height is? Do they have a girlfriend? Do they get laid easily? Like all kinds of things, and that will flavor the way that they process what they think they're doing logically. It will still have a little bit of a little bit more than a subliminal influence on it, right? So I think that this is something where the storytelling, something like, well, what Yuval Noah Harari talks about. I think really that guy is one of the guys who really, if there's anybody who's making sense of the world right now and understanding it in a way that I just listen, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's it, that's right. It's that guy probably right now, because I think he wrote about fiction, he wrote about storytelling, and it really is about that. You could come out with all of the facts. You could be right. You could be scientifically accurate. You could show loads of data and evidence and everything. But if you present it like a PDF of bullet points, right? It's not going to resonate. On the other hand, you have a guy who just comes up. He's like, "Man, the Muslims, build the wall, drill, baby, drill, make America great again." Is it true? Probably not. But is it a story? Is it a coherent story? Yes. And stories are what people process emotionally. That's why religion has been so powerful, because it's full of fucking stories. It's full of stories that people believe literally, a lot of them, right? And the stories they make people feel something, and then they use art, right? Christianity, has the Vatican's got like it's full of art and sculpture, and Michelangelo and Raphael and all these people, who've been just Christianity just comes out with a huge the hymns, the gospel choirs, everything. And then you've got Islam with its, the prayer call, it's musical. You've got the calligraphy, the architecture, the geometry, all of that. You've got Hinduism, which is super colorful, and everything is there's emotional messaging. And when you are emotionally affecting somebody and they're laughing with you or they're crying with you, then you can fucking wrap up any ideology that you want in it. And the most intelligent people out there will just be putty in your hands a lot of the times, right? I mean, that's kind of what I think is the reality of it. I don't think it's reason alone. I don't think it's rationality alone. I think that the bullshit artists have made use of emotional storytelling to get ideas across. I don't think the scientists have done it. They scoff at it. They're like, no, fuck that. We're not going to have any spin. We're going to have this research article. Everything's going to be dry and boring. We're just going to state facts. And that's not the kind of shit that resonates. You have to make it interesting. Carl Sagan, Richard Dawkins, Carolyn Porco, Neil deGrasse Tyson, these people, they created storytelling and awe and emotional resonance from truth and science, and they've been effective. We don't have enough of that.
Yeah, 100%.
On this side.
It seems like the two graduates from the University of Basel foreshadowed a lot of 20th and 21st century communication and culture, politics, and frustration. The first one was our boy Friedrich Nietzsche. And the opening line of Beyond Good and Evil, what if truth were a woman? And now through our egalitarian eyes, it sounds misogynist. And you could define him as misogynist, but that misses the point. That's a brilliant opening line, at least through the lens of the culture and attitude at the time, which is what the essence of Nietzsche's philosophy was, that truth itself, objective reality, might be stoked by and determined by not only perception, but emotion. And that was an underpinning not only of morality, but epistemology itself. And then the next graduate from the University of Basel, only a generation later, to the point where Carl Jung, actually had professors who knew Nietzsche personally. Carl Jung said what you said, which is we are creatures of storytelling. And these stories are anchored in the archetypes, which have a direct correlation with instinct. So that's why you have a ubiquity of the types of stories, regardless of culture or race or ethnicity. You have the dual mother. You have the fallen god, and he's got this catalog of hundreds of archetypal stories that are like Noam Chomsky's foundational elements of grammar. So just like we could have these endless combinations of how we string words together and construct sentences and language, Noam Chomsky revealed that there's only a handful shared by every single culture and ethnicity and kind of person on the planet. Similarly, there's only a handful of essential stories that we tell and retell and will tell forever because it's how we're wired. So when you combine all of this, it reinforces your point that it's all about storytelling and it's anchored in emotion. So we base our values and the intentional goals that we set as a society not based on some kind of computer program as to what would be best, but based on our instincts. And for most of our history, we've been little tribes in caves, flush toilets, and cities is a new and alien thing for our species. So we live in a 21st century world, but we are animals anchored in the instinct and the language and the stories that helped us survive for hundreds of thousands of years on the African savannas with lions and tigers and bears. And that's the essential reason we're
That's
fucked.
right.
And that's also the reason that a guy like Trump, let's say, and other populists have seized the reins. And their mechanism of control is attention that's fostered by digital technology. So, this connection between social media and instantaneous global personal communication and the rise of the populist movement is interlocked. And in this sense, are we actually making some progress because we're getting closer to the heart of who we are, which are shitty, instinctive storytellers?
I think social media to me is a lot like you said, people use it and they try to, like, broadcast their victimhood and everything. To me, I think it's like alcohol or money. It just makes you, the more you have it, the more you use it, it just makes you more of who you are. Right? I mean, people are like, well, money can corrupt people. Does money make people happy? No, it doesn't. It's like, if you're an asshole and then you make a shitload of money, you're just gonna become more of an asshole. If you're a really good person who wants to do good things, you make a shitload of money, then you just become more of a good person. You can act. We've got examples of all of these people. And then it's the same thing with alcohol. It's just kind of, you give some to Mel Gibson. He's like, oh, I didn't mean to, say all that shit about Jews. I'm
But
just, I was wrong. It's like, yeah,
yeah, but
probably
is
meant it,
is Mel
right?
Gibson like he's an anti? I'm Jewish, right? He's an anti-Semite. I don't appreciate his anti-Jew rants. However, I
Mm-hmm.
love
Yeah.
his acting and I love his directing even more. Braveheart, which he directed and I think co-wrote, is a masterpiece of a movie. And then
So,
Apocalypto, if you ever saw that, that is an amazing fucking film done by this raging Jew hater. And similarly, look at Elon. All right. So Elon is lying out of his Aspergery ass on X. Every other tweet is just pure bullshit, or it's exaggerated, it's hyperbolic, it's biased, it's manipulative.
Mr.
However, Elon knows more than anyone else that you need to do good physics and mathematics and astonishing engineering to accomplish what he's accomplished in all of his businesses, whether it's coding for PayPal, whether it's engineering and chemistry for Tesla, rocket science literally for SpaceX and Starlink. This guy knows that, there are
Mm-hmm.
rules to the road. There is objective truth, at least when it comes to engineering, mathematics, and science. And yet, this same guy who's so brilliant at filling the sky with satellites, the roads with electric cars, is a raging
Well,
troll.
like
Yeah,
PayPal,
yeah.
Neural,
So
everything,
I think he knows
and
exactly
open
what
it.
he's doing.
He does, and I understand it. And I understand why somebody in his position would do what they did too. There's a logic to it, and it actually makes sense. And you remember in 2022 when Joe Biden had that summit with all the
Yeah, he
makers of
didn't
electric
invite
cars,
Elon
and he had Ford, he had
because he
GM,
didn't
he had
want to
like all
piss
of these
off the
other car companies.
unions. Sleepy Joe, Uncle
He didn't.
Joe didn't want to piss off the American union worker. So Elon, who doesn't hire union people, was not invited. This is classic
He was not
Democrat libtard bad strategy.
right, and that was the moment. That was the moment. Until then, Elon Musk was doing everything. He was voting Democrat. He was doing all this shit until 2022, right? When and then when that happened, he just realized he's like, now you got two people running for president, right? You got one who's from the Kamala Harris, basically Joe Biden, right? And she's like, okay, no, fuck Elon Musk. We're not going to do that. Like this guy he's like 55 George Soroses in terms of wealth, right? Um, he's doing electric cars. He's doing environmental. He's the one who's actually done shit for the environment. He's done all of this stuff. Okay, and he's like, here, take my money. I want to work with you. I want to do this. Invite me to the meeting. I made these batteries. I've made them open so that everybody can use them. He does all this stuff, and the liberals like, no, we hate billionaires. Elizabeth
Well,
Warren's like, okay, no,
it's
fuck
not
it.
hating
He's a
billionaires. The
billionaire, so you must.
Democrats take lots of billionaire money. They hate fucking Elon because of the politics, and
They,
it's a self-fulfilling
they,
circular prophecy. You could say the same thing about Mark
the,
Andreessen.
no, Spitz, the politics came later. I'm talking about before 2022. Yes, there was a thing about, unions and, he's like a free market capitalist and all that stuff he had. And those things, like he was an imperfect ally,
I
an
get what you're saying. I'm
imperfect
agreeing
ally,
with it.
which,
I'm the one who just said that I'm divorced from Bill Maher because he got up for 12 minutes and ruined my
yeah,
relationship. I'm
yeah.
never going to watch that motherfucker's show. I used to look forward to it every Friday night,
No, no,
and Bill Maher is dead to me. And Neil deGrasse Tyson, whom I put on a pedestal and admired in every fucking way, is dead to me after he empowered Michio Kaku to lie out of his ass about quantum computing. I'm with you. I
I,
get it. I get it. And if I had as much power as these
I,
people, who's to say if I wouldn't be as big of a raging troll as they are?
so it's not, and I think that there's another thing to it. Now, there's this sort of delusion that I think the liberals and the leftists have about how these billionaires, they just want to make more money. They want to make more money. I calculated it. The amount of wealth that Elon has, if he spends $1 million a day, it'll take him 1,943 years to get rid of all his wealth. Okay, to take his entire
Currently
like
400
$400 billion
billion. It goes
fortune.
up and down, with a tariff decree.
Yeah, yeah. So it'll go up and down, but on average, okay. So let's take it like it's going to take him 1,943 years to get rid of all of his money if he spends $1 million a day. Again, theoretically, this is not a guy. This guy's got more money than he can even imagine spending. He's not about increasing wealth. He put down like $50 billion on Twitter. He wants now influence. He wants power. He wants to shape the world in the way that he imagined it. Okay. Now you've got one candidate who's like, fuck you. I'm not going to invite you to the summit. Right. He's like totally snubbing him. And you've got another guy who he can just tell. He's like, oh man, you got shot. It's just so you're my hero. You're amazing. And this guy's like, okay, come here. Just come to the White House, bring your kid, wear a hat, wear a stupid fucking t-shirt. And then, just go yell at all my cabinet secretaries and, to make policy, do whatever the fuck you want to. And you've got that guy. And he's in the White House all the time. And he's shaping history. He's shaping politics. He's shaping the economy. He's doing all of this stuff, right? And he's got leverage. He's like, if he like Trump is not going to like, okay, well, Trump and him are going to fall out. Trump will get pissed off at him from time to time, quite a bit. A lot of MAGA got pissed off at him when he stood up for the Indian people with the H-1B visas, right? A lot of everybody gets mad at him, but he's never going to let him go because the guy's got fucking
Yeah, and he
$400
can
billion.
influence local
He's
elections, even though he personally helped fuck up Wisconsin for the right.
He's talking about the AFD in Germany. I mean, he's all about internet. He's influencing whatever he can because he's out there, and he wanted a candidate who would just give him access, and he's going to say whatever he has to say to keep that candidate's favor. And I don't think that that's a bad strategy.
But he doesn't do it all the
for
time.
the gold.
He thinks the tariffs are stupid. He insulted Navarro.
He thinks the tariffs.
By insulting Navarro, you're indirectly insulting Trump too, because Navarro and Trump are at the hip with this tariff bullshit. Trump, when Musk, called Navarro a moron and dumber than a sack of rocks, The same thing could have been said of his boy Trump, who believes in the same bullshit. And then Elon went further and said that fuck tariffing the EU. If we want to hedge against China, then the EU, Canada, and Mexico should form a bloc, an economic bloc with the EU. And that's a reasonable and smart strategy because Elon is intelligent. Trump is not. Trump has amazing interpersonal skills, but he's near zero strategically. Elon's got game.
But
Elon
Trump is,
obviously has awareness and some strategy. Trump does not. Trump is
yeah,
great at human intuition, reading a room, and then bringing out the worst in everyone's worst side as a populist political phenomenon. That's it.
Elon can insult Trump's tariffs. He can insult Peter Navarro. He can do anything he wants to, as much as he wants to. I don't think these guys are having a
It's too
falling out anytime
pragmatic.
soon.
It's too,
Because
but Elon has been
yeah,
progressively phased out the last few weeks, and it reached a crescendo the one week where he fucked up the Wisconsin election for the judiciary. He came in his cheesehead hat in a condescending, ASD kind of stuttering, mumbling, motherfucking way. And the Wisconsinites, even the right wing ones, were like, get the fuck out of here with this patronizing bullshit, buying votes. Fuck you. It was 54-48 or something with the independent vote calculated in there. They had their asses handed back to them, and it was kind of a hello. Maybe we should get Elon off the fucking gravy train of campaigning because he's the opposite of Trump. Elon is a strategic genius. He gets that stuff. He's analytical. And Trump is the host with the most, who has zero, Z fucking row strategic game. So, all right. And then the other hit was this tariff business. So, in the same week, Tesla lost tens of billions in market cap because of the tariffs, and Elon had his ass handed to him in Wisconsin. So there's since been, have you seen the two together? Have you seen Elon's big edicts coming from Doge of late? Notice that Doge has been sidelined in the top news. It's all tariff, tariff, tariff. It's fighting the
yeah,
judiciary, and now it's shifted to the immigration front with literally kidnapping people off the street without any due process, locking them up, and then shipping them out of the country to a notorious Central American jail with no transparency. That is fascisty bullshit. So they're gunning it on that front, this air quote constitutional crisis. Everyone's forgot about Doge in this news cycle. Will Elon come back? Yeah, now they're talking about the $5 million visa. For 5 million bucks, you can get a visa. You can buy your way into the country. And of course, if you're South African, they've created a special program. If you're white South African, you've obviously been discriminated against in post-apartheid South Africa, so there's a special immigration program for you. And the list goes on and on. So will the bromance continue? Yeah, but it ebbs and flows, and I think their honeymoon is over. But
mm-hmm.
but all this goes to the
Yeah.
point, I guess, that we're gravitating around, which is the discrepancy between appearance and reality, the human versus the avatar that we see in the news, the expedience of smart and powerful people in an attention-based, commoditized digital communication environment, and how this all leads to the current clusterfuck we're in, where you have populism ruling the roost, and you have this destruction of objective truth because nobody believes anything anymore. So where do we go from here?
We've been here before. So without social media, I don't want to make the comparison. I won't make it. But
are you gonna bring
I,
the Hitler word into this conversation?
I, yeah, but I wish they had a different name for Hitler before 1940. Not talking about post 1940. I'm saying pre 1940. The way that the ascent to power, initially starting by telling everybody that all the institutions are
Yeah,
bullshit. You
check.
can't trust
We
the
can go through the
institutions.
list. Check. Yeah, yeah.
Like yeah, the CIA, the Department of Justice, the judiciary, the fucking Congress, yeah, and all of these things, the media, the New York Times, all of these other sort of like
Yeah.
actual real media news channels have accountability, that self-correct, that do retractions, that all of that stuff, that self-regulate in a way. All of those are bullshit. The WHO, the CDC, the NIH, everything
And
is
now the
bullshit. But the
Fed.
people
The
that you
Fed
gotta,
is bullshit as of yesterday.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
terminated. And the only thing, the people that you can trust me, Donald Trump, you can trust Joe
Well,
Rogan, the
not really.
podcaster,
They're
right?
on
Who,
the shitter now. I think Joe is having his doubts.
yeah, he may be, but the thing is, this idea against, that Twitter is the real media. That's the thing. All mainstream media is bullshit. The only thing you can trust is
For
Twitter and Joe
now,
Rogan
right?
and the Donald Trump press release and the fucking IDF, and this kind of stuff is just say like it's bizarre. I mean,
Yeah,
this
but
kind of stuff
here's
has
the
happened
difference.
before.
I think we have an unprecedented. I love that word, unprecedented, because you keep upping the bar, right? What's yesterday's unprecedented is today's routine newsflash. So
Yeah,
anyway, what I think the ripcord here though is objective reality expressed by the dollars in everyone's pocket, the economy, and even the overall strength or weakness of this country you're ostensibly trying to make great again. So, a piece of news that I believe was just in, I think, a New York Times scoop that Netanyahu was ready to rip against Iran. So, I've been predicting, and I was ranting on TikTok only a week or two ago, that Israel is ready to bomb the shit out of Iran. They want to neutralize, hold back their nuke program. Israel has never historically been this powerful. Hamas is neutralized. Gaza is in ruin. Hezbollah is more or less neutralized. Southern Lebanon is in ruins. The U.S. is now actively bombing the Houthis in Yemen. The Iranian defense system has been shown to be weak and ineffectual against Israeli precision bombardment, while conversely, the Iron Dome has proven itself incredibly invulnerable to hundreds of Iranian drones and ballistic missiles, with only one fatality, ironically, a young Arab girl, right? So Iran is up
yeah.
against the wall. Netanyahu is hungry to bomb the shit out of them. And the news flash of just last night, I believe, and I believe it, is Netanyahu was ready to go, and Trump said, whoop, hold on a second. Remember when Netanyahu was at the White House? Part of their conversation, no
Mm-hmm.
doubt, was Netanyahu, and I was ranting about this. I knew this had to be true. Netanyahu was like, hey, Donnie, we're ready to go. And Trump, with the looming tariffs and with the instability and with all this China shit, he was like, hold on a second. Maybe I could win that Nobel Prize by reactivating the nuclear treaty that I pulled the plug on. Only instead of it being the dark guy, it's now
Yeah,
me initiating peace with Iran. And let's see what we can do. So it's been delayed. The
yeah,
reason I bring this up is recession, economic disruption, and chaos is in the works. The tariffs are ridiculous. They're
mm-hmm.
ginormous. They're random. They're stupidly implemented and they're unstrategic. It's going to reduce demand. It's going to trigger stagflation. And by any indicator, it's going to be rough. That's number one. So Trump ran on the economy stupid, and now this stupid motherfucker is jamming the economy into the ground, right? Now, the second one, what would be even
Right.
worse for the global economy than the American economy triggered by these idiotic tariffs, the global economy to be shot? Oil prices. When the market
Right.
collapsed, Trump said two things, which was the bonds were still stable and the oil prices were low. Well, when the bond market started freaking out, that's when he changed course on the main tariffs. But oil is still low.
Did
if we, with the Israelis, bomb the shit out of Iran, there's a high chance the Iranians might even retaliate against Saudi Arabia. Oil prices will literally
Yeah.
double per barrel in 24 hours if there's a major attack that triggers a larger escalation. How's that going to
Yeah.
fare for the economy in the US and globally in the midst of this tariff clusterfuck? Now, the reason I bring all this up is you could be a populist, bloviating motherfucker all you want. And you can go full air quote Hitler on all of this institutional disruption and dismantling. But Hitler was on a roll. The German economy was in overdrive. They were militarizing up the ass. And then his subsequent
Yeah.
invasion and annexation of Czechoslovakia. Poland took 2 weeks, right? And that was done. France, Northern Africa. The problem with Hitler was he was successful until he wasn't. Trump is only 2 fucking months in, and he has frankly wrecked the economy that his was his ticket to ride, and he is inches away from a major war in the Middle East. So let this guy go. Let him have what he wants. And that is the key difference.
Yeah.
Because I don't think even his own minions are going to put up with the destruction of the economy and our boys going back into conflict because of this guy's rampant strategic stupidity.
I agree with
Yeah.
you on a lot of that. Okay. When I was talking about the distrust of institutions and in favor of, I'm talking about MAGA.
I'm with you. I'm
the
just
way that
saying that
people
there's a corrective mechanism. You could counter my point by saying he could capitalize on that, right? To marshal up the minions.
Yeah. So the minions, I don't know how many times I've thought, okay, well, even his minions are not gonna, but it's every time I've been proved wrong. I will probably be proved wrong again, or maybe this is the one. I don't know about that. But I do think that in terms of letting him go, I think James Carville had the right thing. He's like, you just need to fucking sit back and let this car just roll ahead. Just let him do it. And just watch what happens. I mean, there is a point, and I'm kind of at it right now. We've been following. Remember when we talked about this, and 10 years ago we talked about this, right here in Toronto, and saying, well, no, this is not that. Our country is involved.
Yeah,
this is not how it's going to happen.
You were right, and I was wrong. You were going by the data of the polling. And as an American, it was such a paradigm shift. Such a radical paradigm shift that I had my own implicit biases. I was like, this is just too much. Like the polls are misleading. That the second, remember, we were sitting around and I was like, yeah, what they say. But when they get into the voting booth, they can't go for it. They're not going to go for this guy. And they did. Enthusiastically, they did. Right? So I was in disbelief and I was dead ass fucking wrong. But I've come to learn. Trump taught me about my own people, right? It's easy to be bubbled up. It's easy to have your own implicit biases. And it's easy to take for granted as a middle class white guy, frankly, to bring in the identity, not necessarily one's own privilege, but the relatively high standard of living not necessarily shared by my fellow Americans, at least to the point where they were way more pissed off about way more things than I was.
Yeah, no, I know. And all I'm saying is that, from that day until now, there's been this sort of devolution, not only with the MAGA right and everything, but also on the other side. There's been hysterical reactivity, and it's just, I don't know. Right now, everything is at a point. The thing that's really of all of these things. Like I remember when I was shocked by the Access Hollywood tape. I was like,
Everyone
oh
was
fuck, this is it.
except
This is over.
Steve
Right? But
Bannon. Steve Bannon was like, keep going,
yeah,
Donnie. It doesn't matter. Steve Bannon was
yeah.
right.
He's always been right. And the problem is that he said that on January 31st or 30th in
Well, he made that
2028,
claim
Trump is going to
on
be
Bill Maher's
inaugurated.
show, right? Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
he's everywhere. He's been
Yeah.
making that claim everywhere, and he's talking about it. But the thing is, what I've been and I would normally I'd be like, yeah, fuck that. This is the Constitution. You're messing with the Constitution. But the kind of shit that Trump has been able to do, and since he got inaugurated in just a few weeks, he's doing everything by executive order,
Well,
and
who
nobody's doing anything.
can? I mean,
And he's got
Congress is, the Republicans have the
that.
House and Senate, right?
They have the Supreme Court. They got everything that the minions. I mean, I commented on your last video that you did. Like they're just. I mean, they've got all of this. You've got the kind of congressional Republicans that you have are the ones that will roll over and they'll stab their own fucking family to be loyal to this guy. So like the example I gave was Ted Cruz. He called him Lion Ted the whole time. Then he called his
Well, look
wife
at
ugly
Marco
in front of the
fucking
whole fucking
Rubio,
world.
who's now all for just kidnapping Americans off the street.
Lindsey Graham and everything. There's just this the obsequiousness of the congressional Republicans. That's not something that the Democrats are ever going to have. Like they were freaking out about Joe Manchin and that Kristen Sinema and
Yeah, but
so
just to give
there's
context for our
there,
listeners, I did a video rant where I said, wouldn't the Republicans and the MAGA minions be concerned that empowering the American president, the unitary executive, which with this much authority through Trump, aren't they concerned that when it flips to the Democrats will similarly take advantage of it? So if you are redefining the boundaries and power of the executive branch with the president at the top, then isn't this going to whiplash against you when the Democrats inevitably retake the Oval Office? And your response, again, to give context, is well, even if that happens, let's say Trump just jacks up executive power, one way or another leaves office, and what I cited was we go from King Donald to Princess AOC. So let's say it's 2028 and Ocasio-Cortez is our first female president, then what's to preclude her from going similarly woke all over the government, rehiring everyone they fired, putting DEI front and central, going full green again, etc., etc., etc. And I guess your point in summary is that the Democrats aren't going to be as opportunistic as the Republicans. Is that the point?
they're going to go against them. There's going to be all these like what do you call
Well,
them?
the
Blue dog
Democrats are
Democrats,
fragmented.
right?
That's
That
a
are going
big
to
problem, is that they're broken up into all their constituents.
I listen. The
Yeah,
Republicans are
that's what I was
fragmented
just
too.
going to say.
Okay,
Right.
you've got pro wing. You've got the people who want to bring in all the Indian H-1B visa immigrants and ramp them up. You've got this other thing that's like with Steve Bannon, the Elon Musk wing. You've got all this. They're fragmented too. The only thing is that when it comes to Trump, when it comes to one thing, even if they don't agree with it, they all just get in line. All right. So Elon Musk doesn't like the tariffs. He's not going to do anything to stop it. Right. Anybody who doesn't, a lot of the Republicans don't like the tariffs on Canada, for instance. They're not going to fucking do anything. Like they're like Kentucky, a lot of these southern states
Well,
are
the
getting
tariffs are only
dinged
just
because of the
begun.
Canadian
My
tariffs.
point is, I mean, how much dinging are they going to take?
But
And that's a separate discussion, because we've seen one thing after another. We saw that everything from the Access Hollywood tape early on would destroy Trump, and
that,
nothing is impact. This motherfucker organized and triggered an insurrection, and he watched it on TV as commander in chief and didn't do anything for 3 hours as cops were getting their heads beaten in. So, and he won again. He's back in the Oval Office.
pardoned them
Yeah, and he
all the
pardoned them
domestic
all, and
terrorists.
he's president. So what is the slippery slope, right?
People who are setting like cyber trucks on fire, which they shouldn't do, but fucking like the people who are doing that stuff, those are the terrorists. And the January 6 people are not. I mean, what I'm trying to say is that I think this should be. There comes a point, and you know, this is why I was referencing you and I and our conversations from 10 years ago, and just the paradigm shift and with the shock
Yeah.
that it kind of gave to brains overall, just physiologically. And where I'm at the point where I think you have to at some point let, not just let it, but burn the whole fucking the thing down and
Yeah,
start
but
over
it
again.
depends
And
who
like
rises from the ashes. So I have one Pollyanna hope. I have a Pollyanna.
wait,
Go
wait,
ahead.
wait, wait, let me finish what I'm saying. So, and you're right. It depends, what the result is. I want to see that result. I got to see this. We got to let this thing play out. Right now,
Well, we got
nobody's
no
stopping him.
choice, right?
Okay, the
Yeah.
judges. Well, no, they do. They do. Like, this is what Congress is supposed to do. This is what the judiciary is supposed to do. The judges are going around. They're saying what they want to say. You appeal to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court says we're not getting involved. And then they say, okay, we're going to hold him in contempt. They subpoena him. You got to show up in court. Like, we're not showing up in court. And they don't have to show up in court, and nothing happens. And then he goes to the Supreme Court and he gets immunity. And then nothing happens. Nobody does. Like, this is the system. Like, this guy has tested the system. You know how Borat went out and you thought, you're like, okay, is he going to do the next thing?
Yeah.
He's
He
not
he
going to push
took
it further,
he
is
took
he?
a
He's not going to
shit,
push
by
it.
the way,
He
in
played
front of
so
Trump
far.
Tower, remember? In Borat. Yeah.
Yeah, in the movie, like, he brought his shit to table, and he showed pictures of him like with his naked son and all this, and the woman's like, oh, that's very nice, we don't do that here in this culture. And no matter how far he pushes it, people are still falling for it. And this is what it is. Nobody, it's not that they don't have a choice. There's a whole system to
Yeah.
stop this shit from
But
happening.
I'm
It's
confident
just
there's a line. So two things. One, the
not fun.
second Borat movie was worse than the first, and the reason largely is the charm of it wore thin. But the problem was that the first movie
Yeah.
was so popular that it was hard for him to be candid and to get candid responses because people were already in on the joke. That was it. And this ties into what you're saying, is that you reach a tipping point of credulity, and then people are over it.
Yeah.
So that's one. The other is, I look to Brazil with some hopefulness. Bolsonaro pulled the same shit that Trump tried
Mm-hmm.
to do. And he actually mimicked his actions. He had an insurrection at his own capital too. He was like the El
He's
Salvador
not.
president now, up Trump's ass and emulating and all that.
He's
But the Brazilian people were not having it. They're
not
not
for president.
having it. And the reason the Brazilian people want to throw Bolsonaro in jail, and there is no divine redemption and redux, there's no second Bolsonaro term, there is no phoenix rising from the insurrection ashes, because the Brazilians know what fascism is like. And actually, the South Americans have intimate knowledge of what it's like. You know, Chile, the list goes on for dysfunctional, populist, shitty tyrants ruining the country. We have yet to be immunized, which I think is part of your point. Trump is a
Yeah.
vaccine. Trump is an injection of authoritarian, fascistic, institution busting virus. Now, here's the thing. This is the essence of our conversation right now. If the vaccine has so much of the contagion in it, you can actually get the disease from the vaccine, and then there's no turning back. But if the vaccine is enough to get you sick to the point where you build immunity, then it has served an important function. And I think my hopefulness, my Pollyanna view of the entire Trump clusterfuck is that it has alerted us to the bullshit on the left. It has shown us the dysfunction of the institutional left and its failure to connect with the American people. And it also has revealed the excesses in only 2 months of this kind of authoritarian, fascistic, institutional busting attitude. So the question is it going to be a
Mhm.
vaccine that's going to immunize ourselves for the future? Or is it the revolutionary transformation where the vaccine takes over the whole body and kills the host?
I think we need to
Well,
let
again,
it
we have very little
roll and find.
choice. What again? The Democrats could and
We don't
should recruit and find and vet and manage and empower a new Democratic superstar. It's based on personality. You did a post a while ago and you did a comment I agree with. Fuck policy. This goes back to the storytelling that you were alluding to. Policy
not,
does
not
not resonate for a population that's more like Joe Rogan than Sir Roger Penrose. So people react to good
you
story.
got
Fuck the
liberty.
policy. Don't worry about your left wing fucking Democrat policy and just find us a charismatic populist kind of personality who can win an election. That's it. Yeah.
Be an asshole who can kick ass, who can play the victim card, not like the identity victim card. And the other thing that they got to do, I think, Democrats, and I'll tell you, this is the biggest thing, and it's working here in Canada. This is a Canadian election. We should probably
Yeah.
do a whole separate episode about
Yeah,
that
I was
because
going to
that's
ask
like,
you about Canada. You guys
um,
are the 51st state. You're America's hat. Fucking Trudeau, and now the new guy is, the governor of the state of Canada. Fuck
uh,
you and your moose head. We don't give a shit if you don't import Jack Daniels anymore. I mean, what the actual fuck? It's like we have enjoyed a century and a half of peace with our northern neighbor and an open trading partner, and now we're fucking that up.
something happened here where
Right,
Mark Carney,
right.
who's the new our prime minister, um, so do you know anything
Yeah,
about
yeah,
him? Do you know any
business
background about this guy?
guy, kind of really moderate,
There's a
and and kind of
yeah.
MAGA there.
Well, so yeah, Canada
Right,
is actually more
right,
MAGA than people
right.
think. All right, so you need ID if you want to
Yeah,
vote.
yeah,
Number one, okay. Number two is that our
right.
immigration system is merit based. There's no lottery or anything like that. Even though they've done the refugee thing a little, overdone it, and people are very against it. And now number three, we're into our like the pipelines, Alberta oil. Like we create that. We talk a lot about the environment and the caribou and all that shit, but we've got lower corporate tax rates in the U.S. So we're very very sort of the typical Canadian is fiscally conservative and socially liberal. So even the conservative candidates who come here and run for the election, they have to guarantee that the public healthcare system, single payer healthcare system, isn't going anywhere. They have to promise that abortion rights are not going to be infringed, like gay marriage. All of that stuff is going to stay. All the socially liberal stuff is going to stay. But they just run on economics. Okay, so it's basically about economics. That's what I think at least wins and loses elections. Now, you've got the tariff situation happening. You recently had the inflation and that whole economic mess that we've been going through with the interest rates and the post-pandemic shit. And this guy, Mark Carney, was actually tapped by the last conservative government of Stephen Harper, right, during the 2008 financial crisis. And he was governor of the Bank of Canada at the time. So his signature is literally
Yeah,
on our
yeah,
money,
yeah.
like the guy who signs
Like
it.
like Trump on the COVID relief checks. He insisted that his signature should be on it. Right.
But the actual money. So what he did was Canada, for those who don't know, did not rode out the 2008 financial crisis pretty comfortably. A lot of that has to do with the way the Canadians are. The U.S. sort of regulates corporations better, but doesn't really regulate banks as well. Canada regulates its banks like very, very well. Corporations not so much, kind of because we want all the corporations to
Yeah.
leave the U.S. and come here, right? So we make it easy for them. So we've got what Mark Carney did was he was in charge, working with the conservative government, helped us ride out this sort of financial crisis. We survived it, the only sort of developed country that really survived it and wasn't affected by it. Then he was taken over to the UK because he's also a British citizen. to do the Brexit negotiations. So he did those, right? And he worked on that, and then he was also at Goldman Sachs for about I don't know, for 13 years or something, and then he worked with Bloomberg. He was on their executive board of directors. So he's a big he's talks about money, he knows money. And when he had the phone call with Trump, he didn't talk to Trump when he became prime minister for a while. Trump called him and said that he'd requested a call. He called Trump, and that's how Trump basically let Canada off the hook in a large way, not totally, but in a large way compared to all those other those stupid
the
commandment tablets
penguins
that he
and
had
shit.
with the tariff.
So we don't use the Penguin Island as kind of a resupply center to get around the tariffs. Like we're going to build an airport on the
Exactly.
Penguin Island.
Just they don't use that, right? So preventative measure. So this guy, so what he does, Carney has a call with him. Didn't really tell anybody what he's talking about in the call, and some details have leaked that he was talking about treasury bills, right? So the U.S. has a lot of debt. For just a quick, my understanding of it is the U.S. has a lot of debt, and they allow treasury bills are basically like little IOUs that they to other countries, so other countries can own their debt, and they get whatever interest and they get benefits and things like that from it. So Canada has about 350 billion worth. The U.S. is in debt
No, we're in debt
13 trillion or something. I don't know what
I think 32 trillion, $32,000 billion, and our annual interest is now exceeded that of the Department of Defense. It's between 8 and 900 billion a year to pay for just the interest on this paper.
Yeah. So what this guy did was he basically went to Europe first. He didn't go to the U.S. That's a typical first move. He didn't go to the U.S. He went to Europe. He went to met with a lot of European leaders like Macron, and then he met with Starmer and Prince Charles, or King Charles now, and all these guys. And he's basically sort of behind the scenes working on doing something with these treasury bills, and he told he went in that phone call with Trump. That speculation is that he told him something that he's going to do, where Trump just decided, okay, well, he tweeted out, called him prime minister, did not mention any 51st state. I didn't say anything. He talked about easing the tariffs and everything, and he came right back to all the Governor Trudeau stuff. Everything was gone, and now there is a he's just not fucked with Carney.
Carney's smart, and also Carney anticipated that the bond side of the house would really sway Trump's hand, because all of the insider scoop on rescinding these ridiculous, random, ginormous, ever fluctuating tariffs is the jitters in the bond market. So when people dump US treasuries, we could be seriously fucked, because our credit rating goes down. The treasury bills were always a lower interest safe investment for other countries too, because USA, I mean, if the USA tanks, then it's genuinely the zombie apocalypse, right? It's the end of the world. And now Trump has fucked shit up so much in terms of reputation and predictability that U.S. debt doesn't seem like as stable an asset as it used to. That's the essential story behind all of this, which is Trump within only 2 months has fucked shit up, at least regard to perception of U.S. stability and predictability, that Carney could do something like this, because everyone's starting to doubt the U.S. right now.
They are. Yeah. So if you're smart and you have a little bit of an idea, that's good. But the good thing about, I think, what Carney's doing is that I think the liberals, so you got to understand, this thing totally changed. So last year, around December or something, Trudeau, when he resigned, at the time he resigned, the liberals here were 20 points down in the polls. 20 fucking points. They were absolutely blasted. The conservatives, led by... So Trudeau resigns after his chief deputy prime minister and financial minister resigned first, and then after he resigns, they're running. The liberals are still pretty low. Trump comes in, starts doing all of his tariff shit. they kind of rise up a little bit. Then Carney comes in, and people are just not associating Carney with the liberals because he's not talking like them. He has not talked about any social issues. Like, he understands that one of the things that liberals, and it works like this in the U.S. too. The Democrats have all the minorities, the blacks, the Hispanics, the Arabs, the Muslims, the Indians, like all of those people are under the Jews, right? Democratic. They mostly
The
vote
Jews.
Democratic. Now, yeah, the Jews. Yeah,
It's
hey,
like
listen,
it's like Chappelle said.
right?
It's like when you're referring
Yeah,
to the Hebrew people, if you ever say the Jews, nudge nudge, wink wink, Kanye, you're gonna get yourself into some trouble. The Jews.
yeah. You're getting, well, no matter, and that you're always going to get in trouble. None of this shit means anything anymore. But anyway, so all these sort of minority groups, they all vote liberal and they vote Democrat in the U.S. They vote liberal here. But but they're all very
Right.
conservative communities. Jews, right? And they're all like. There are Arabs and Hispanics and blacks would be like, I don't know if I'm comfortable voting for a woman. And then their wives would be like, yes, yeah, I don't know about women. I'm a woman. I'm very emotional. I can't lead a country. That kind of, you'll see these people. They're on TV talking like this. So a lot of these communities are very culturally conservative. So the moment you start bringing in all this shit
Well,
about, like,
that's
pronouns
hashtag
and,
why Trump won again.
yeah, right. So, and this is the thing, when you start talking about that shit, you
Oh
lose
yeah.
these communities. Okay. More important to them than economics. So if you keep your story focused on economics, like Bill Clinton did, okay, and like Obama did, you're gonna win landslides,
Well, yeah. So again,
landslides,
the
right?
economy
So
is going into the shitter. So that's good news for the freedom loving people who prefer democracy.
they're trying to call him out, like in all of the press conferences, they ask him, the like, Prime Minister Carney, do you think there are two genders? And, he's like, well, then, and then he answer, he'll brush those questions off, like, very, vaguely, that he just doesn't give a shit. He's just like, yeah, they probably shouldn't be playing in sports, but Canada's a place for everybody. Anyway, thank you very much. And then he'll move on to something else, right? So give everybody. He's just very.
Yeah,
He's not
he's
the
kind
most
of
articulate
boring. He
guy.
lacks
Uh,
riz. Trump has riz.
I am
Riz is that woo, is that personal charisma.
I am dying for
Yeah,
boring.
but
Four
look at
years of Biden, I was so fucked.
Starmer in the UK. He's boring as fuck. That guy. That guy couldn't charm himself
Yeah,
out of a paper bag of chips.
his own Chris.
Crisps,
You mean
right? I was looking
crisps?
for that
Yeah,
crisps. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So anyway, what's I mean,
but
from a Canadian point of view, from America's hat, what kind of predictive mojo do you have, or what do the Canadians think about where everything is and how it's shaking out?
are
Oh yeah,
very
more so than
patriotic right now.
ever.
Very patriotic. More so than ever. We're going out there. I mean, I'm doing it. My daughter is doing it. My daughter's 8 years old. We're going to go to the supermarket. We're seeing they've labeled all of the Canadian
Right.
stuff with maple, like red maple. So everybody's
Yeah.
focused on buying that. Everybody's okay with even going a little bit more broke because everybody's broke anyway. So we're okay with it, but we're not gonna
Yeah.
give into
And the
this
Chinese are
Trump shit. So
reacting
there's
similarly.
yeah. So there's this whole idea. The 51st state has absolutely enraged Canadians. They're very, very pissed off. So right here at the citizen level, you go to Costco. It's
Oh,
empty.
that's
Right? There's
interesting. Right. The American businesses in general. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So it's just it absolutely been it's just there's a big wave happening, and I think that the conservatives here they were all very like pro MAGA and everything. They were getting a following because of that, and now they're trying to
Right.
detach themselves from MAGA. It's a it's strange because Trudeau was a liberal and they were 20 points down the polls. Now that they're way up, and they're predicted to actually win a majority government, which in a parliamentary
Yeah.
system is a big deal, right? And they're so it's one of the biggest turnarounds ever. The provincial uh, premier, or the governor of Ontario, I guess the equivalent of the governor of Ontario, is a conservative named Doug Ford, and he's been shitting on the conservative federal candidate because he doesn't want to tie himself to him, right? And so it's like the opposite of the guy who came from Trudeau's party is actually looking as he's differentiated himself from his party way
Yeah,
more
Doug
than
Ford was doing
the other
all the
guy.
U.S. talk shows, the talking heads shows, and he was
Yeah,
saying "fuck you guys," basically. Said we love. He said the
yeah,
people of
he
Canada
is,
love
and
American people, and he looked at this as basically the policy clusterfuck of one moron. That's how he
yeah,
viewed the whole thing. But that said, this moron happens to be the leader of the country, so tough shit. We're gonna barrel down. No offense, nothing personal,
yeah.
but you could take your Jack Daniels and shove it up your ass.
I think sit, let it happen, let it play out. Just watch what they're doing. Grab your popcorn, let the whole thing burn down. It's that there's a new generation of Americans, and not just Americans, but everybody who just needs to see the shit play out. They need a new frame of reference. They need to know how bad things can get. They need to know that, like, The Handmaid's Tale and all these like dystopian things are not fiction. I mean, this is the closest I've ever felt to actually living in a dystopian world, right? It's everything that's happening
Yeah.
is
Yeah, I'm
insane.
with you. About
So
2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I wrote a blog post called something like Trump could be the enema. A second Trump term would be the enema that America really needs. And so it's exactly what you're
that's it.
describing. There is a little bit of time until the
Yeah, you were right.
midterms. The midterms is going to be the next power move for the Democrats. And given how everything's going, it is an opportunity to retake the House, maybe even the Senate, and then take things from there. And then it'll be the ultimate excuse for Trump to fuck up because it'll be the Democrats torpedoing his brilliant tariff strategy. So it'll keep churning and burning, and then Steve Bannon will be raging that there'll be a third term there when the motherfucker is like he'll be like 80, 85 years old and even more orange. So if he's even still kicking, so who knows? But I agree with you. I think that it has to play out. A lot of the excesses of the Democrats had to do with an entitled generation of people who had no idea what the fuck they were talking about because they grew up in a country with such a high GDP in the lap of luxury and basically spoiled rotten with these communication tools where they could piss and moan and carry on. And conversely, the other side of the political aisle, similarly spoiled and entitled, just wanted to blow the whole thing up. So you had the spoiled kids with the woke agenda feeling high and dry. And then you had conversely the other side who were like, fuck this shit, burn it all down. You had one side wanted to grow
Yeah,
the institutions that were already there and have government take an even more active, larger role. And then you had the arsonists and the anarchists who just wanted to blow it all up. So the pendulum swung from one side to the other. To your point, the anarchists are not going to blow it up. Let's see what's left in the ruins. And then, if nothing else, I think, again, from a Pollyanna point of view, we've learned a few lessons. And I think the one major outcome that will come out of this Trump administration, one way or another, is I think that we're going to tweak our laws here in the States. The president is already too powerful. And I think the pendulum will swing the
mhm,
other way. I think we're going to disempower the chief executive. We're going to neuter the president. And with that, I think America might be heading toward more of a parliamentary democracy, frankly. Our two-party system is bullshit and dysfunctional. And there's the rise of the third party, like the libertarians, for one. And I'm particularly fascinated by the libertarians and I want to jump on a podcast with a libertarian mofo to rebrand the libertarians. I tried to rebrand the Democrats with a branding expert on another podcast, Mr. Vince Perry of Perry Branding Group, and we arrived at some interesting conclusions, not too different than what we're talking about here, that policy is kind of bullshit. You
Well, I do.
need a personality. But I think we need to rebrand the libertarians. We need to basically shake this up, turn it into a parliamentary democracy, disempower the chief executive. This is ridiculous that some bloviating ADHD ridden asshole completely train wrecks the global economy on a whim. This is just unreal,
This,
man. And dial it back. This could be the output of all this.
the other thing is, like, we can, first of all, making predictions has not been my strong suit, or really
and I was dead ass wrong
including
about the ascendancy of this bloviating motherfucker years ago.
a very good futurist when it comes to world conflicts and everything like that. But this, I just don't think that anybody's been able to predict it. There is a Supreme Court right now that's going to stay the way it is for a very long time, because the justices that have been appointed by the Republicans are young. The Trump guys are very young. Clarence Thomas, if he is going to be replaced, will probably be replaced during Trump's term by an really, really young, even more fucking crazy
100%.
Clarence
the
Thomas.
Federalist Society is going to perform one of those TSA body cavity searches on the next SCOTUS pick.
Whatever. They're going to just appeal everything to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court's going to let them do it. Amy Coney Barrett is sort of occasionally breaking with the guy.
I'm not
here
so
and there.
pessimistic as you are about SCOTUS, frankly. I think that you notice the mandate 9-0 on this this El Salvadoran mofo. Okay, it was 9-0. Now they tweaked the language from facilitate and effectuate to just facilitate, and facilitate is very passive, and they knew that they gave Trump an out. However, contrary to what Stephen Miller was screaming in the Oval Office, it was not a win for the administration. 9-0 against you is not a win, regardless of how you word salad the shit out of the edict. So that's a sign. That's an early sign that even though, okay, they've given this guy blanket immunity with the principle that the unitary executive should not be self-conscious about policy and decision making, right? They can't be sued, so they do whatever they need to do. But I'm sensing it's not just Amy Coney Barrett with a conscience. They're judges. There is rule of law. The Constitution does exist. And regardless of interpretation, however literalist, there's this literalist bent, Gorsuch and all that horse shit that what did they believe in 1787, right? Well, fuck you. Come on, man. Common sense, right? But I'm not as pessimistic as you are. I don't think the justices are just all going to be tools.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm more pessimistic, but I'm just all for burning everything down, starting over,
I don't
getting
know
a new
how
frame of
that's
reference
feasible, though.
for new generation.
I think we might come close, but I don't know. I think I've always been kind of Pollyanna. I'm going to continue to be Pollyanna. We'll see what happens. But I look to Brazil, and I look to this vaccine having its impact, and I look even to the MAGA minions. Okay, in the red flyover states, very rural, manufacturing based. They're going to take dependent on government handouts, okay? They get more handouts than fucking Manhattan. so I see Trump's own base being like, what the actual fuck is going on with this guy? Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're gonna see.
Well, it's
We'll see.
awesome catching up with you.
Wow.
The tide is turned. There's that Chappelle skit where he's Rick James and he's fighting with Charlie Murphy, and the story relayed by Charlie Murphy on the Chappelle show, and then he goes, darkness, the tide has turned, and it's basically like Rick James getting his vengeance, and you usually have me on your show. So now you came on my show,
Yeah,
and I could say the same thing. Darkness, you've turned the
I loved it,
tide.
and I do want to be on the what was it, no hair all heart thing. I want
All
to like
right,
give that
yeah.
a shot again
Let's
and
talk
see how
about
that. But
relationships.
yeah, last thing, did you see the my response to Steve was it
No,
Steve
I
Miller that
didn't.
went
I
viral?
didn't. Let's put a link. I'll put a link to it
John,
in the description. Send it to me.
John
Yeah, of course.
Favreau,
The Pod
the
Save
pod
America
pod
super libtard. Yeah.
Barack Obama's speechwriter. So he actually shared it, and then it just
And
went
for our
all over the place.
listeners,
But
what did you
I'll send it
say?
to you. I
What's
think
the
you'll.
context, real quick?
I think we should just let them
Oh,
look at the link.
that's like a tease. That's a tease.
You gotta see it. You can't just I can't if I
All right,
narrate
cool.
it,
We'll
it
put in the
kills the whole
link.
thing.
Thanks for joining us, and thanks for listening to Bald and Bloviating. I'm your host, Mookie Spitz, with my special guest, Ali Rizvi. To be continued, the conversation. And follow, like, share, and leave me a message. There's a little link. You could text the moderator here. And I'm welcoming in guests from all walks of life, including my Canadian mofo friend, Ali. Thanks for joining.